The first key moment of the story happens when the billionaire catches his maid quietly opening the fridge in his mansion. This is the turning point that triggers everything else, because it shows how quick judgments, especially from a position of power, can lead to big misunderstandings. In this scene, the billionaire walks into the kitchen unexpectedly. He is a man who is used to order, discipline and loyalty from his staff. He believes that every action inside his home must be accounted for, and he has little tolerance for anything that looks like disobedience or theft. When he sees the maid standing in front of the fridge, his mind instantly forms a conclusion without asking her anything. To him, the image of a servant checking the fridge uninvited is a violation of trust. It doesn't matter to him at that moment whether she is hungry, curious, or just looking for something she had been told to get. He assumes she is taking advantage of her position. His reaction is sharp and public. He raises his voice, demanding an explanation, but before she can say much, he cuts her off. In his eyes, a strict example must be set so other employees do not even think about doing the same. He believes that showing kindness in such moments can be seen as weakness, and weakness, he thinks, has no place in his world of high control and perfection. So he makes a decision on the spot. She is fired. This decision is made in front of other household staff, adding to her humiliation. The maid, shocked and deeply hurt, doesn't argue. She has likely worked for him for years and never expected such treatment over something so small. She packs her few belongings into a small bag and leaves quietly, her eyes filled with tears. This moment also tells us something about the nature of misunderstandings. In the billionaire's mind, the case is closed. She was checking the fridge without permission, and that's enough to justify ending her employment. But what he doesn't realize is that he has only seen the surface of the situation. His wealth and status have created a sort of mental barrier, where he measures actions based on control rather than compassion. Because he has never faced hunger or scarcity in his own life, the idea that someone might check a fridge for survival rather than greed doesn't even cross his mind. That gap in understanding is the real tragedy of this scene. The maid's silence during the incident adds to the emotional weight. She could have explained herself, but perhaps she felt too ashamed or too shocked to speak. Maybe she had already been treated coldly before and knew that her employer would not believe her no matter what she said. Her tears as she left the mansion show that the fridge incident wasn't about the fridge at all. It was about being judged without being heard, about losing a job she depended on, and about the sting of being treated as dishonest when she was only trying to help someone she loved. For the billionaire, this moment doesn't initially feel significant beyond workplace discipline. But as the story continues, it becomes clear that this was more than just a small act of suspicion. It was a test of his humanity, one he failed in the moment. This single misunderstanding will go on to change how he sees people, how he judges situations, and how he values the truth. The first keynote is powerful because it represents the common but dangerous human habit of acting on assumptions. It also sets up the emotional impact of what comes later. When the truth is revealed, without this moment of quick judgment, there would be no guilt, no redemption, and no lesson to learn. In real life, situations like this happen far more often than people realize. A glance, an action, a fragment of behavior is misread, leading to decisions that cannot easily be undone. For someone in the billionaire's position, such a decision might feel like a matter of principle. For the person on the receiving end, it could mean losing not just a job, but dignity, trust and stability. That imbalance of power is at the heart of why this moment is so intense. The billionaire has the privilege to forget about it after a day, but for the maid, it could mean not knowing how she will feed her family tomorrow. This gap in stakes is what makes the incident so unjust. The first keynote of the story is in essence a mirror of human impulsiveness, showing how easy it is to harm someone when we act without taking a breath to understand their side. It's the point where everything could have been different if just a few more seconds were spent listening instead of judging. It is the seed from which guilt, truth and change will later grow. But at this moment in the story, it is only a harsh ending to what the billionaire thinks is a simple act of discipline. The second key moment of the story unfolds after the maid has already been fired and has left the mansion. The billionaire is alone in his grand home that night, surrounded by the silence of his wealth, yet something doesn't feel right. He lies in bed, but sleep refuses to come. The image of the maid's eyes full of tears, confusion and perhaps a hint of disappointment keeps returning to his mind. It wasn't the first time he had disciplined someone, and usually such decisions never bothered him. But this time there is a heaviness he can't explain. It is as if some invisible thread of guilt has wrapped itself around him, pulling at his thoughts and preventing him from feeling at peace. He replays the scene in his mind. Her standing in front of the fridge, the way she froze when she saw him, the way she didn't even try to argue when he accused her. That silence, not defensive, not angry, just quiet, now feels different to him. At the time he took it as an admission of guilt, but now, lying in the dark, he wonders if it was something else. Was it shock? Was it resignation? Or maybe it was the look of someone who knew that no matter what she said, the decision had already been made. The billionaire begins to feel uneasy with how easily he acted. His entire career and fortune had been built on making fast, decisive judgments. And that skill had served him well in business, but when applied to people's personal lives, he realizes, those snap decisions can carry far more weight than he ever considered. He tells himself it doesn't matter, she broke trust and he dealt with it. But the thought doesn't comfort him. If anything, it leaves him more unsettled. As the hours pass, guilt grows into curiosity. He starts thinking about her life beyond the mansion. How she comes from a poor background, that she works long hours, and rarely takes a day off. But he has never really bothered to ask about her family or her personal struggles. To him, she was simply the maid, a role, not a person with her own story. Now, with nothing but the echo of his own thoughts, he wonders what could have driven her to open the fridge without asking. Was she hungry herself? Was there something she needed for her home? Or could it be that there was a reason so urgent that she didn't think twice? By the early morning, his restlessness turns into a need for answers. He realizes that if he does nothing, the questions will continue to gnaw at him. The thought that he might have been wrong and that his actions might have hurt someone innocent starts to feel heavier than his pride. He decides that he must find out the truth, not because he wants to justify himself, but because he feels a strange pull, almost like a debt he owes to his own conscience. This moment in the story is critical, because it shows the first crack in the billionaire's hard, judgmental exterior. In the first part, he acts with cold authority, certain of his rightness. In the second part, doubt creeps in, and for the first time he starts to consider the possibility that his judgment was flawed. It's not yet a complete change of heart. There's still pride, still ego, but it's the beginning of an internal shift. That shift is important because without it, the story could have ended right there. She would have stayed fired, he would have moved on, and the truth would have remained buried. The guilt he feels is not just about the act of firing her, it's about the way he fired her. Publicly, without listening, without any attempt to understand. The more he thinks about it, the more he sees that his action was less about protecting his home and more about protecting his pride in front of his staff. This realization stings because it forces him to confront something he doesn't like to admit, that his decisions are not always as principled as he tells himself they are. This second key moment is about the slow, uncomfortable process of self-awareness. The billionaire has spent years believing that control and decisiveness make him strong. But now he is starting to understand that strength also requires humility. And humility requires the courage to admit you might be wrong. It is this discomfort, this gnawing feeling of doubt, that drives him to take the next step, to go and see her, to hear her side, and to finally uncover the truth he didn't bother to ask for in the first place. This is the turning point from blind authority to a search for understanding. It's not redemption yet, but it's the first step toward it, and without it, there would be no story worth telling. When the billionaire finally decides to confront his curiosity and find out why his maid had been checking the fridge, the morning after his sleepless night, he gets into his car, not to head to his usual business meetings or to inspect one of his properties, but to travel to a part of the city he rarely sees. The poorer side, where narrow streets are lined with small, aging houses. This is where she lives. It's an area far removed from the luxury and order he is used to, and even the air feels different here. As he steps out of his car, he notices how modest the neighborhood is. Paint peels from the walls, laundry hangs on fragile lines between buildings, and the streets are quiet except for the occasional distant chatter of children playing. He approaches her home, a tiny weathered building with a door that looks like it has been repaired many times. For a man who lives in a mansion with marble floors and golden fixtures, this place is almost unthinkable. Yet it feels alive in a way his mansion never does. When the maid opens the door and sees him standing there, she looks surprised, even a little afraid. She doesn't invite him in immediately, perhaps expecting more scolding or questioning, but he explains, in a tone softer than the one he used the day before, that he just wants to talk. She hesitates, then steps aside, allowing him into her home. Inside, the contrast to his world is even sharper. The furniture is worn, the walls are bare, the air smells faintly of medicinal herbs. On a thin bed against the far wall lies an elderly man, frail, pale, and clearly ill. The billionaire's gaze lingers on him, and he sees the way the maid moves quickly to adjust the blanket over his shoulders. This is her father. In that moment, the truth begins to reveal itself without her even speaking. Still, she explains, her voice quiet but steady. The day before, when she opened the fridge at the mansion, she wasn't looking for something for herself. Her father hadn't eaten in 2 days, and the little food they had at home was almost gone. She had been hoping to find some leftovers she could bring to him, not out of greed, but out of desperation. She hadn't asked because she feared being told no, and she didn't want to admit her family's situation to anyone, especially not to someone as wealthy and intimidating as him. As she speaks, the billionaire feels something shift inside him. Yesterday he saw her as an employee violating trust. Today he sees her as a daughter fighting to care for her sick father. The image of her in front of the fridge transforms in his mind, no longer an act of disobedience but one of quiet sacrifice. It dawns on him how quickly he had judged her without knowing the weight she carried outside of her work. For a man who has built his empire on numbers, deals and appearances, this is a moment of deep human connection. He realizes that her world and his are not just different in wealth but in the daily challenges they face. He has never worried about where his next meal will come from, never had to quietly hope for leftovers to feed a loved one. The guilt that began the night before now swells into remorse. He thinks of the humiliation she endured when he fired her in front of the staff, and he wishes he could take back those words. He also begins to see a bigger truth, that wealth has insulated him from understanding the struggles of people around him. In his world, problems are solved with money, but in hers, even asking for help feels like a risk. The fridge incident was never about food. It was about survival, pride and the silent battles people fight every day without anyone noticing. This moment is powerful, because it strips away the billionaire's certainty and replaces it with empathy. The man who once believed control was the greatest strength now sees that compassion might be stronger. Standing in her small home, looking at her father, he realizes that real dignity comes not from protecting one's pride, but from protecting people's humanity. The truth that made him cry wasn't just the fact that he had misjudged her, it was the realization that his wealth and power had blinded him to simple kindness. The visit changes him. By the time he leaves her home, his view of her, of himself and of what truly matters has been altered. He knows he must make things right, but more importantly, he knows he must never again allow judgment to come before understanding. This is the heart of the story's emotional transformation. The moment when truth pierces pride, and the human side of a powerful man finally begins to awaken. The fourth and final key moment of the story is where the billionaire's journey comes full circle, from harsh judgment, to deep remorse, and finally to redemption. After leaving the maid's small home, the image of her sick father stays with him. It is no longer just a detail in her explanation. It has become the central truth that has shifted his perspective entirely. He sits in his car for a moment before driving away, looking back at the modest house, thinking about the quiet strength it must take to live each day under such circumstances. He feels a weight in his chest, a mix of shame for what he did, and a determination to make things right. When he returns to his mansion, the grandness of it feels different now. The marble floors, crystal chandeliers, and polished silver no longer give him the same sense of pride. Instead, they remind him of how disconnected he has been from the lives of the people who keep this house running. His mind plays the scene of the firing over and over again. The way she stood silently as he accused her, the way she left without defending herself. The more he thinks about it, the more it hurts to know that her silence was not guilt, but quiet dignity. He doesn't wait long before taking action. That same day he calls her, his voice softer and slower than usual. He apologizes, not just in the casual way people sometimes do, but in a way that carries real weight. He tells her that he was wrong, that he misjudged her, and that he is deeply sorry for the way he treated her. Apologies do not come easily to a man of his status, but he knows that without it, his actions will never truly be undone. He offers her job back, but this time with a significant raise. More importantly, he tells her that from now on, he wants to help her father get proper medical care and ensure their home never runs out of food. The maid, surprised and overwhelmed, hesitates for a moment. After all, trust once broken is not easily restored, but she sees the sincerity in his voice, and the change in his eyes. She accepts not because she needs his money, but because she sees that he is genuinely trying to make amends. In the days that follow, the billionaire doesn't just send food and money. He personally arranges for her father to be treated by the best doctors in the city. He visits their home again, this time bringing groceries, blankets and other essentials. The gesture is not about charity for him, it's about restoring the dignity he took from her, and acknowledging the pain he caused. Every visit reminds him that people's lives cannot be measured in the same way he measures his business, with profit margins and success charts. They are measured in moments of kindness, trust and understanding. This change in the billionaire also affects how he treats all his staff. Where before he saw them only as workers performing their roles, now he sees them as people with families, struggles and dreams. He begins to talk to them more, asks about their lives, and offers help where it's needed. The cold, distant atmosphere in his mansion begins to warm, replaced by a sense of respect and loyalty that no amount of strict rules could ever have created. The emotional heart of this moment lies in the way the billionaire allows himself to be vulnerable. Wealth and pride often act as a shield, keeping people from admitting they were wrong. But here he not only admits it, he acts on it. This is what makes his transformation complete. His tears are not just for the injustice he caused the maid, but for the realization that for years he may have been blind to other similar moments, other quiet cries for help that went unnoticed. The story closes with a powerful sense of balance restored. The maid returns to work, not as someone who has been given back her job, but as someone whose worth has been acknowledged. The billionaire, meanwhile, has gained something that money could never buy: a deeper understanding of compassion and the humility to see people for who they truly are. The truth that made him cry was painful, but it was also the beginning of a better version of himself. From that day on, the fridge incident becomes a silent reminder for him: never judge without knowing the full story. It's a lesson he carries into every part of his life, a constant check against the arrogance that wealth and power can so easily breed. And while he cannot erase the pain he caused in that one moment, he makes sure that it becomes the last time he lets judgment speak louder than empathy.